Thanks so much, Amanda. Hi, Scout. It's a thrill and an honor to be chatting with you today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Well, let's hit the ground running. In past interviews, you've shared that one of the most defining aspects of your childhood was sports. Could you help us set the stage for our conversation and share a bit about that journey with us today?
Yes, so I started in sports at second grade. And for people that don't know my story, I came here through adoption when I was 7 years old. So I obviously don't speak the language and from China. And I grew up in a town where there weren't a lot of people like me with a disability, being a minority. And sports was something that I felt like would help me transcend a lot of the cultural and social barriers. That really is the beauty of sport, right? It is without a border, so to speak. So I decided to do youth soccer and softball. And what I realized when I started out doing sports, and really would be the continuation throughout grade school and high school, was I was always welcome to be there. So I could come to the games and the practices and the tournaments. But when it came to actually playing in the game, being able to compete, I was largely denied that opportunity. So everybody else got to play, and I was just told that I had to sit on the bench or stand on the sidelines or given other drills or activities to do while everybody else got to compete. And just had such a huge effect on my self-esteem and the way that I looked at people with disabilities. I grew up thinking that people like me didn't belong in the game, didn't get a opportunity to play. And it wasn't obviously until I found Paralympics that really my whole life changed, and was able to get a running leg, that I was able to be competitive really for the first time.
Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to dig into something that you said at the top around how when you first came to this country, sports seemed like a good way to learn the culture and socialize. And I'm curious, what was your impression of American sports when you got here? What gave you those signals that this was something that you wanted to get into?
Well, that's a great question. Well, actually, to be honest, I didn't know anything about sports before I just decided to join. I don't come from a particularly athletic family. Nobody in my family did sports. My parents were not, you know, athletes or anything. They didn't play sports growing up. And so I was only drawn to it because it was the one thing that when I came to school, I just saw so much joy and happiness that my classmates had from doing soccer and softball and these other sports. I didn't even know what it was, but just I want to go and join and participate. And so I just remember that being like something that, okay, it seems like it's fun. And also, oh, it's doesn't take place in the classroom, which for me was a natural draw because obviously I don't speak the language very well, and I'm having a hard time connecting and doing well in school academically. So, oh, an activity outside of school just seemed something like I was drawn to and interested in.
That's so insightful to hear because especially not coming from an athletic family, you were
Mhm.
able to just infer all of these ways in which the kids at the time around you were deriving joy and finding that you yourself wanted to participate in that, and that this was something that that went beyond language
Yes.
in a lot of ways. That's really fascinating to hear, and I always wonder about the cultural aspects of whether or not because sports is so inundated in our culture on
Yeah.
TV all
Yeah.
around us, but you really derived it from direct experience at school.
Yeah, and from the emotions, right? You can, it doesn't matter where you are in this world and what language you speak, you can tell people's emotions from almost any experience. just by reading their facial expressions, their body language. And all I got was that whatever this activity was, they were having a lot of fun doing it. And okay, I want to be part of that, to try it. And even though I had never seen either of the sports ever, even on TV or anything.
That thank you for sharing that. The emotional connection that you're describing, I think, speaks to some of the inclusivity that can be generated in sports. But of course, one thing we can talk about is how there can be more inclusivity. I'm curious to hear about what you think inclusivity looks like for people with disabilities in sports, and how you think Title IX, which is, the theme of our summit this week, how do you think Title IX should help with that?
Well, that is another great question. And one of the things for me growing up is, okay, I got to participate in mainstream able-bodied sports at a youth level or a high school level, junior high level. But then after high school, I remember there was a part of me that was so sad when the tennis season was over in the spring, because it was like, well, where do I go from here? I've played sports my whole life, and there's no opportunity for me to continue playing sports beyond this place. And what we know for able-bodied athletes is a lot of times college is really the end of their athletic career, right? Collegiate sports. Well, imagine having a disability where for most of us, it ends at high school, because there is no college level and very few opportunities at the collegiate level. And while there are many programs around this country that have sports for people with disabilities, mostly wheelchair sports, so really just a niche segment, a small segment of the disability population, these sports are mostly club-based. They're or intramural based. They're not affiliated on an NCAA level with the actual university or colleges. So they receive far less funding, support. They don't have the same resources as collegiate able-bodied sports. And so what I really feel like there's an opportunity for Title IX is to serve athletes with disabilities, women athletes with disabilities, where currently at the collegiate level right now, there are virtually little to almost no opportunities. So I'll give you an example. I have a young girl that I'm mentoring right now who's going to go to a Pac-12 school, so a Division I college, and she's going to go play wheelchair basketball as part of their club wheelchair basketball team. And the most that she's going to receive in scholarship money playing for this club program and team is $7,000, which is just, I mean, she's out of state, so she might as well be going to the school and paying her entire way there. But meanwhile, she has the ability and will likely represent our country at the Paralympic Games in wheelchair basketball. So you could win a medal for your country and have to pay your entire way playing that sport through college, which to me is just absolutely bizarre. And why should she be denied the opportunity to earn a full athletic scholarship, just like her able-bodied counterparts? But right now, we don't see that. And so, and also the measure that we have with people with disabilities is, well, you can only earn a scholarship if you are able to compete or run or swim or jump at a able-bodied standard. And what we know about is people with disabilities, that standard cannot be the same, because obviously I'm missing my leg from the knee down. I'm above the knee down. I'm never going to be able to run an able-bodied time. And so there's got to be a process, a system in place where you can still have a disability, compete collegiately, and it's not measured in the same criteria as we measure able-bodied performance and results. So that's really where I think there's a huge opportunity that's missed here, because these athletes are incredible. They are going to represent our country. And what we see from Olympic sports is that college is an incredible feeder program for Olympic sports, but at the Paralympic level, college is not a feeder program currently because there's very little opportunities for these athletes to continue to train to compete throughout their college years. And so right now we really have not a development program that continues beyond the high school level. And that's something that we have to improve upon, especially as we go to LA 28 and we are looking for a more gender equal Paralympic Games. Currently, the Paralympic Games are not gender equal in terms of participation, and we're really not all that close. So that's something that, you know, it's like if we don't have this platform, this pipeline and space for athletes to continue at a college level, we're not going to see them continue to do sports as they go to school.
I'm curious to pull on a couple of threads there because you've made so many wonderful points. The college sports system being a feeder to Olympics and not so much to Paralympics. I'm curious, knowing your background and knowing that you were approached while you were at UCLA to explore, you know, whether or not you wanted to compete in the Paralympics. I'm curious, how does your experience is there anything in your experience that encourages you towards the development of a lot in which you described could be better for bringing about more opportunities for folks on the collegiate level?
Well, I'll give you my experience at UCLA, and it was an incredible time and chapter of my life, and I'm so proud to be a Bruin. But one of the things that happened when I was at school is in my sophomore year, I got approached by US Paralympic track and field to, you know, be developed to compete at the Paralympic Games. They were trying to recruit more women, just seeing that the numbers were so low for women in the Paralympics at the time. I come from a triathlon endurance sports background, so obviously they knew I could run, but I had never done track before. We didn't even have a track program in high school when I grew up. And so I didn't really know anything about it, but the opportunity to compete at the Paralympics amongst the very best athletes in the world was very attractive to me. And so I said, well, where do I start? And they said, well, maybe you should try to contact the coaches at UCLA, the track program, and see if you can join or do some workouts or see if the coach would be willing to work with you, you know, separately on the side. But, you know, college is a great place to start. You're in school, they have a very good program. So I went to one of the assistant coaches and I asked her about, she was the sprints coach, and I asked her if I could train with the team. Obviously, I'm not asking for the same services or benefits because I'm not competing for the school. And obviously, I'm not there on an NCAA scholarship. But she said no, because obviously I'm not part of the program. And obviously, there's other reasons for, you know, legal and liability. And I did understand that. And so it just raised a lot of frustrations for me that here at the time I was aiming for the London 2012 games, but had no place to be able to train and no coaching at that time. So I was doing it all on my own, and I would do it like super early in the morning before the team was out there. And I just started running, but I didn't really know what I was doing. And I will say, you know, since then, the coach has, you know, she knows who I am now and has since apologized. But, you know, she just said, I had no idea what you were. I didn't know anything about the Paralympics. She just thought I was a student that was just wanting to, you know, run, work out. And practice time is not workout time for college students, right? And so, but my point is that now I'm in a program where at San Diego State, I train with the team and I've been able to travel with the team. I'm post-collegiate. I'm now considered professional, but the model that has been created with Coach Sheila Burrell at the university, she's the head women's track coach there, has been a model that I think can really work for a lot of other programs. And I know so many schools or coaches are intimidated by the idea of reinventing the wheel, right? Like, oh, we've got to create a whole program, a whole new thing for athletes with disabilities. And my reply is that it's not as difficult as they might think. How you train an able-bodied athlete, the same kind of workouts, the technique that's required for an able-bodied sprinter to be great is very similar for what I need to do to be great. Obviously, there's going to be modifications and things that will be needed to need to change in order for me to be able to do some of the drills and some of the workouts and whatnot. But it's really not all that different or difficult. And so the idea of integration, I think, is something that can be modeled at many programs across the country. It's not unrealistic to have, you know, 1 or 2 athletes with disabilities as part of your able-bodied program. And I think you just need to have leaders, coaches, people that are in levels of authority that have the willingness and the open-minded approach of working with somebody with a disability. And I'm obviously so lucky at San Diego State to have that. But naturally, I do understand that for a lot of college programs, the idea of it can be quite intimidating.
I have to say, your journey of being so driven and so proactive really reveals a lot that can continue to be built programmatically to support people with disabilities, inclusivity in sports, and just really the ways in which we reconsider who we center and who we include in a number of our programs. I think your journey, some of the pain points that you encountered, you've also are helping now to build against, which is really great to hear. We have a couple minutes left here, and I want to go back to something that you touched on that I think is a really important topic for us, which is gender equality at the Paralympics. As you said, historically, there's been a big gender disparity when it comes to competition, with fewer women competing than men. And just to tie things together, your vision for a more inclusive sports environment, one that gets kids, students discovering their strengths at a younger age. Could this be a pathway towards gender equality at the Paralympics? How are you thinking about this?
Absolutely. But not only do we not have a gender equal Paralympic Games in terms of a 50-50 men and women participation, but we don't even have the same number of sports and events for women at the Paralympics as we do for men. So that's obviously very problematic. And I'll give you another example. In my sport alone, track and field, we have 17 fewer, women have 17 fewer events, medal events than men. And that's going to be the program for Paris 2024. And so when people say, well, 17 fewer, okay, times that by 3. That's the number of medal opportunities that women are denied at the Paralympic Games in 2024 in the biggest sport at the Paralympics. And it's not just the medal, but it's the trickle down effect that it has on women. She's denied the opportunity not only and having those 17 fewer events for women, that means that all these women that could have competed in these certain events aren't going to be able to even go to the games, right? So she's not going to have the platform, the opportunity to be on a global stage. It also affects her ability to market herself if she's not given the opportunity to compete at the games, to be more visible, to create PR around the games and disability, and obviously a financial aspect, right? To support herself and if she has a family. So it goes beyond just being denied the opportunity to compete for a medal. It has this very trickle down effect. And so that's something that really concerns me when we look at the Paralympics, and it's sort of the chicken or the egg theory, right? We're told that we don't have as many events because the participation numbers are are not there for women in those events. But okay, are the participation numbers not there because you don't even offer it in the first place? So how is a young girl supposed to train for an event that currently isn't even offered at the Paralympics? How is that a motivating factor for her? So it's just really difficult in that sense of, we've got to have the sports and events more equal. And that's something that we need to continue to push for. And as we talked about earlier, okay, well, how do we get participation numbers up? How do we get more women and young girls interested in Paralympic sports and these events within these sports where they cannot be denied? We have the numbers now, right? And so one of the things that I'm really passionate about, and I'm actually have started a fund to specifically support young girls and women that have a passion, that are on the path of elite sports. Because one of the things that I found out was when I started doing Paralympics full time, pursuing this, I didn't have a single commercial sponsor. Nobody was interested in working and supporting a Paralympic athlete at that time. You just didn't see it on TV or in advertising. And so I was living out of my car, on my friends' couches and spare rooms. And that's how I made it work, because there was just financially wasn't even feasible. And then when you look at the added cost of the adaptive equipment needed to do the adaptive sports, Paralympic sports, the barrier of entry is just enormous. And so I'm hoping that through partners and the organizations that I work with, along with the fund, that we can develop and we can support and fund a talent pool of young women that will be able to compete at future games, and that will help to create more opportunities for women to be able to have to compete in Paralympic sports.
That's really great to hear. I think what you've revealed throughout the conversation are these gaps in opportunities. And one thing that it seems to be surfacing for us is that we need more bridges. And you have just brought up a bridge that you are creating yourself in order to really meet these opportunities, or have girls and women meet these opportunities in a way that you may not have experienced, but your experience informs the ways in which that this can really shape up. So thank you so much for sharing that with us today.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Scout. This was such a wonderful conversation. It's been great to spend some time together, and it's just been an honor.
It's great to talk to you. Thank you so much for having me and shining light on these issues and ways that we can progress forward through Title IX.
Wonderful. Thank you.